The last time our police commissioner spoke at ABNY, which was about a year and a half ago, I was able to say words that you would not have believed possible in 1983, the year James O'Neill started his career as a transit officer, that New York is the safest large city in America. It is awesome a year and a half later to stand here and be able to say these words again. Our city is still the safest big city in the country. We are proud to have the commissioner back at ABNY. He's not only one of our city's great public servants, but he is frankly one of our city's most important public servants. Under his leadership and through a lot of hard work, New York and the NYPD have continued to drive historically low crime rates, achieving record-breaking numbers again in 2018. And while crime was falling, so were arrests and incidents where police officers had to use firearms. In fact, compared to just 10 years ago, arrests are down by 41%, and force complaints are down by 55%. Keeping crime rates low while also working hard to mend ties between communities and law enforcement is tough but essential work. I know the commissioner believes that these relationships truly help keep New Yorkers safe, and they have been a priority of his and the department's throughout his tenure. Commissioner, we have a real debt of gratitude to you, so thank you. Almost 3 years ago to this day, Commissioner O'Neill was sworn in as our 43rd police commissioner. The very next day, the first full day he had on the job, a bomb exploded on West 23rd Street in Chelsea, wounding 31 people. The NYPD responded immediately and effectively, and working in cooperation with the FBI, quickly brought the assailant to justice. We'd expect nothing less from this 35-year veteran of the force, even on the first day that he was on the job. I'll just say one final note. I was talking to a friend last night about introducing the police commissioner, and the person reminded me of a quote from John Kennedy's famed Profiles in Courage. I hope you'll allow me to tweak the quote just a little bit for obvious reasons. A man or woman does what he or she must in spite of personal consequences, in spite of obstacles and dangers and pressures. And that is the basis of human morality. My friend thought this might be a fitting way to hand the podium over to the speaker, and I couldn't agree more. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our police commissioner, James O'Neill.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for that great introduction and a warm greeting from ABNY. I can't believe it's a year and a half since I've spoken here, but I guess I have to believe you. Thank you for everything that ABNY does for the city. You make it a better place. So over the past 3 years that I've been police commissioner, and I still find that hard to believe, sometimes it feels like 30 years, sometimes it just feels like 3 weeks, but I guess that's the nature of the position. One of my main goals has to make sure that the NYPD is more open and accessible to the public and to foster even greater collaboration and partnership between the police and all the communities that we serve. That's the way forward. There's no doubt about that. We are at record lows for crime, although you might not necessarily know that reading some newspapers, that you might think that the city's falling apart. I'm going to walk you through where we actually are. That's certainly not the case. In my experience, the single most important ingredient in keeping the city safe is to make sure that the people of the city trust the NYPD. And this is where we are in 2019. And the transformation of the last few decades has been nothing short of miraculous. Being safe, and just as important, feeling safe, are absolutely vital to the health of our city and to our nation. The 74th session of the UN General Assembly kicked off this week, and the first day of the high-level general debate is on Tuesday, the day President Trump is scheduled to address the gathering. As we do every year, the NYPD uses many thousands of police officers to safeguard the entire two-week event and to help maintain a sense of normalcy for New York City. But if you've been in New York City during the last 2 weeks of September, you might not believe that's true. We're hosting heads of state and diplomats from 193 nations, the largest gathering of world leaders, and it's all right here in New York City. A couple of thousand NYPD vehicles are part of the 200 or so escort convoys that will drive the rest of you absolutely crazy for a couple of weeks. And of course, personnel and expertise from our many great law enforcement partners at the federal level will be out there too, especially the Secret Service, people with whom we work so well in many areas. And while all this is going on, the city continues. Our hardworking cops still have the daily business of 911 and 311 calls to answer, to the tune of about 400,000 calls a month. And I can tell you, no other city on earth has made more of an investment in keeping the public and its cops safe. The results of this work are well documented. By reducing overall crime by more than 78% in the past 25 years, by reducing murders by more than 85%, we are serving people better, using enforcement more intelligently, and repairing and strengthening relationships inside and outside the department. Thanks at least in part to our greater public safety, record numbers of tourists are flooding our streets, restaurants, parks, and Broadway shows. I thought it was 60 million, but I was corrected this morning after a discussion. It's 67 million tourists come into New York City every year. Construction cranes are everywhere, and massive real estate investment has tracked the pathways of public safety from Manhattan to the other boroughs. What does that have to do with the NYPD? Well, growth like this happens when people are safe and when they feel safe too. This is truly an important time for New York City. We're heading in the right direction. So let's talk this morning about the facts, about how we can continue to improve in our record-setting reductions on crime. Over the past 5 years, violent crime has seen its steepest decline since the mid-1990s. As part of that, NYPD cops have seized about 28,000 illegally possessed firearms, including many large stashes from interstate gun traffickers. I can tell you that our police continue to do their jobs better than any other police department in the world, and they're doing it better than ever right now. There are some people and some groups, though, that would have you believe otherwise. I will be honest, I really don't understand their end game, highlighting every incident on social media, trying to sow seeds of doubt in the minds of New Yorkers, trying to convince you that crime is out of control and that your police are afraid to do their jobs. That's insulting. It's insulting to your intelligence. It's insulting to me too, but most of all, it's insulting to all 55,000 members of the New York City Police Department. And it especially denigrates the courageous work of the 36,000 men and women who put on that uniform each and every day and who wear that shield every single day, all in service to New Yorkers. Earlier this week, on Tuesday, we had 4 patrol cops from the 120 precinct in Staten Island confront a man they knew had a history of violence. He was wanted for committing a domestic assault the day before, and the complainant called the police, and they responded, and she said that she just saw him walking through the neighborhood. These brave officers did their job. They moved in to make the arrest, and he violently resisted. They tasered him, but to no avail. And then he pulled out a gun. The officers grabbed his arms and forced the muzzle of the firearm away from everyone, including innocent bystanders. The man was still able to fire his weapon twice, prompting an officer to return fire, killing him. In the exchange of gunfire, a 30-year-old police officer with just 3.5 years on the job was shot through her hand. The suspect was a 39-year-old man with multiple prior arrests, mainly for assault and weapons charges. He had previously been convicted of another shooting in Staten Island, for which he served 5 years in prison. Clearly, he didn't want to go back to jail this week. Our officer, thankfully, is recovering from surgery on her hand and was released from the hospital yesterday. She's a police officer with a family that loves her. She didn't have to do this job. No one made her. She didn't have to become a cop. She wanted to. She made the decision to become a New York City police officer for the same reason most of us do. She wanted to make a difference in the lives of New Yorkers. She's doing exactly that every day. So it really, really disturbs me when anyone questions the motivation or drive or fortitude of the men and women of this great police department. Some claim it was a better time in New York City a decade ago, a time when cops were cops and leaders were leaders. And New Yorkers didn't have to barricade themselves inside their homes, petrified of criminals running rampant. Nothing could be further from the truth in 2019 as we approach 2020. Let's do some comparisons. In 2010, there were 241 more murders than there were last year. In 2010, there were 719 more shootings. In 2010, there were 7,600 more robberies, 7,000 more burglaries, and nearly 5,000 more auto thefts. But what about 2019? Through last weekend, overall crime was down another 3.1% citywide. It's about 2,100 crimes. Now, those are statistics, but those are people too. Those are 2,100 less victims. That includes a 3% drop in homicide and a nearly 12% drop in burglaries. As of this morning, however, we're up 35 shooting incidents from last year. Shootings and homicides in New York City are disproportionately fueled by gang and crew violence. There's no denying that we're experiencing a spike there. But between our patrol cops, our detectives, and our specialized units, we're working tirelessly every day to address the hot spots. Around the clock, 24 hours a day, I get real-time information about every shooting, every murder, every bank robbery in our city. I'm intimately aware of all the ups and downs and all the details of what's affecting our overall crime rate. I also see the trends beyond a single day, a single weekend, or a single month. Spikes happen from time to time which make headlines. But I can tell you that even being up in shootings, which is a very serious thing, that does not, on its own, reverse the very positive trends that we're seeing. I remember a time, and most of you probably do too, when our city averaged about 6 murders every single day. This year, we've averaged less than 1 homicide a day across the 5 boroughs in a city of 8.6 million people. That's a rate of about 3.4 per 100,000. If you have the opportunity today, go on your phone, Google some other major cities and see what their murder rate is. In all of 1990, New York City saw 2,245 murders. Just think about where we'd be if that figure had gone unbridled for the next 3 decades. In the ballpark of 30,000 more people would have been killed. And the same number of other people, the killers, also would have had their lives ruined. And then there's their families and friends of the people on both sides of the crime as well. It's fair to say that over the last 30 years, tens of thousands of lives have been saved, both as victims and as perpetrators. And it's clear to me that the naysayers who claim that our city has reverted back to the bad old days do not care even one little bit about better police-community relations. But great street cops understand that a strong rapport with all the people we serve is absolutely vital to successful police work, and it keeps them safer. That's why another set of metrics is worth noting. While crime was falling, so too were arrests, police firearms use, and notably civilian complaints. There's a trend since 2010, although we are up 20% from last year. Compared to 10 years ago, arrests are down some 41%. We went from 47 police gun battles with adversaries in 2009 to 17 last year. Combined with the massive crime declines, this illustrates the positive equilibrium that's emerged between assertive enforcement and community connection. Now let's look beyond the numbers. Our most significant innovation of the past 5 years, neighborhood policing, is contributing greatly to our efforts to further reduce crime and disorder. Patrol officers have fostered strong relationships with the people who live and work in their neighborhoods, and they're jump-starting local crime investigations. They're swiftly gathering evidence that their community contacts are delivering a far higher quality of local criminal intelligence than ever before, which aids our great detectives. We're hitting crime from every single angle, from patrol to long-term investigations, in a coordinated strategy that has reduced violence to historically low levels, whether the cynics want to accept that truth or not. So how do we keep things going in the right direction? At the beginning of this year, now it's time for that sip of water, we identified 9 precincts where the violent crime rate was more than double the citywide average. Obviously, we're focusing more of our resources in those areas. But we've also immediately called a series of community meetings beginning in February. They were called by the NYPD, but they were led by people who live and work in those neighborhoods to discuss how our city can work together to make every neighborhood as safe as our safest neighborhood already is. And I'll tell you, some of the most insightful comments at those meetings came from young people. And all they need are programs and resources. They want the opportunity to live the best lives they can. They said that could be in the form of after-school activities, but also job training and hands-on learning of a truly practical nature. So I wonder, why don't we just get them what they want? Why don't we get them what they need? And I say we. I'm talking about all of us. You, me, every company, every city agency, every community-based organization, every elected official. We cannot allow this challenge to go unanswered, not when so many young lives are at stake. Together we must figure out a way to get between our youth and the lethal message emanating from the local gangs and crews and others who senselessly drive the violence in our city. According to some of our recent stats, there are more than 220 juveniles in New York City who have been arrested for felonies 8 or more times in the past 2 years. Think about that number. So who's waiting in the wings to join them? And why do we as a society allow this to happen? The NYPD is the preeminent crime-fighting organization in the world. We can be the preeminent prevention organization in the world, too. And the rest of New York City, in partnership with us, can show the world the way. At the NYPD, we have a long-standing tradition of focusing on our city's young people. The Police Athletic League, created 105 years ago, serves more than 30,000 New York City kids a year through various recreational, educational, cultural, and social activities. And Law Enforcement Exploring is a career-oriented program designed to educate and instill leadership and self-discipline. Each year, about 4,000 young people in New York City are enrolled as explorers and complete more than 110,000 hours of community service. And our Police Cadet Corps is a form of paid internship with the NYPD that's open to young people enrolled in a 4-year college. About 11 years ago, the City Council proposed eliminating the Cadet Corps in order to save roughly $1 million a year. Fortunately, that never occurred. We actually increased the number of cadets about 2 years ago from a little over 100 to close to 700 now. Thousands of city kids have since learned leadership skills and earned tuition assistance, and many of them went on to become police officers. In addition, the NYPD and the New York City Police Foundation are working on an innovative approach called Options. It's a virtual reality, scenario-based training that has already provided more than 3,000 young people with decision-making skills based on emotional intelligence and de-escalation tactics. As we expand this program, we hope to connect the youth with life skills, career opportunities, and ultimately jobs. The Police Foundation has already identified companies that are providing information on existing jobs and the skills needed to land those jobs. And the Police Department was also able to give a little over 100 young people this past summer internships in the Police Department, so they get to see who the Police Department really is and who the people are that serve this great city. A lot of them stayed on as college aides too, so there are opportunities even within the NYPD. I'd like to thank Crown Castle, actually, a tech company, for taking a leadership role in this effort, and I ask all of you to consider how you can get involved when the Police Foundation reaches out to you also. The larger point is our mission to help the youth of New York City avoid crime has never been a side project. It's been long understood that this is what the NYPD does and this is what cops do. But we need a greater buy-in from the rest of New York City. It's about joining to help our city. When each of you arrived in this room this morning, you saw on your seats a large photo depicting the NYPD patch and a statue of a uniformed police officer and a child. You're probably sitting on that picture right now, but maybe if there's an empty seat, you can take a look at it. This larger-than-life bronze statue stands on a tall pedestal in our Hall of Heroes in the lobby of police headquarters. It was created in 1939 by noted Italian sculptor Attilio Piccirilli. And I practiced that too, being an Irish guy. After Mayor LaGuardia advocated for a monument honoring NYPD officers killed in the line of duty. Incidentally, Piccirilli, along with his brothers, also carved a marble for the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The cop used as our model was Patrolman Martin Gillen of the 2-0 precinct, and the boy was actually Mayor LaGuardia's 9-year-old adopted son, Eric. Both made trips to Piccirilli's Bronx studio to pose and help produce what's become a metaphor for what the NYPD is doing today, 80 years later. The boy clings to the stoic cop as if seeking comfort. He clutches the officer's arm, seeming more vulnerable than scared. And that's what the sculpture represents. The NYPD protects the vulnerable. So to keep decreasing crime, we must keep looking for the future, to the future. And the future is our city's youth. They're just looking to be valued. Over and over in those 9 meetings, that's all I heard from these young people. We just want to be valued. We just want people to value us as they value other people in this city. And we want to have a chance to have a good future also. And that's throughout the city, in every borough, in every precinct, and in every neighborhood. The police are doing their part here. We have about 36,000 cops spread throughout the city. We have the same officers patrolling the same communities, building relationships each and every day. Through neighborhood policing, we have the delivery system. We just need the full and willing support of everyone here and everyone throughout the city. All of this is fully consistent with our overall mission of fighting crime and keeping people safe. But a huge part of fighting crime is preventing it in the first place. And we can do that. We can do that together by building trust and increasing opportunity for young people. We need to let young adults know that no matter where they grow up, they are valued, that we care about them, that we want them to have a good future. We want them to have a good life. And by leading that good life, that adds up to the good direction as our city continues to grow. It is now our goal to gain through partnership a new level of public support and public action that achieves our common mission of public safety. The clear message is this: we need every member of the public to help New York City. This is a shared responsibility. The police officers who are sworn to protect everyone who lives and works and visits here do so every day, courageously, conscientiously, and with a continuing sense of urgency. But we don't underestimate the difference even one other person or one corporation or one small business can make, and neither should you. So we see the task before us, and we see it as an opportunity, and we can capitalize on that opportunity as one unified city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for being willing to, I guess let me start by saying we deeply appreciate how hard at ABNY, we deeply appreciate, one, how hard it is to be a police officer and how complicated the job is, and we recognize it's a lot different than the lives that most of us have on a day-to-day basis. So if the world, and I know we know it's complicated, if the world doesn't say thank you enough, on behalf of ABNY, I want to say thank you. We have time for some questions. Ma'am, right there.
Very, very proud to be partners with you on options. So the Grand Corporation is doing a study on police, neighborhood policing. Could you tell us a little bit about the metrics that RAND is looking into, and if at all the police is partnering with the RAND Corporation?
So we pivoted in May of 2015 with the way we police. And just to Steve's point before, I've been in this business a long time. I was lucky enough to be a precinct commander. You do hear about through social media and through traditional media that a lot of people don't appreciate the police and they disrespect them. I just want to say that from my experience, and I'm out in the communities every day, that's the majority of the people in this great city do have an appreciation for what we do. They might not hear it every day. Things have changed for police officers. You know, I came on in '83. I had a gun, a couple extra rounds. I had a radio that maybe worked, a nightstick. And look at what a police officer does today. Has a taser, has a body-worn camera, has a smartphone that gives them access to all sorts of information. It's a complicated job, but it's a job they continue to do for the right reason. So when you see a cop out there, if you have the opportunity, go up to him or her and tell them that you appreciate what they do, because they have changed this city. So with RAND Corporation, we asked them to come in and take a look at neighborhood policing. If we're going to change the way we do business, we have to make sure that we went down the right road. So they started this, September? They started this about 3 or 4 months ago, and they're looking at different metrics. Of course, they're going out, they're interviewing police officers to see how they feel about the change, and it's important that we do that. I know everybody in this room understands that there's been 9 active duty suicides in the police department this year, and we have to make sure our cops feel valued and respected. They're doing that. RAND is doing that in the community also. The biggest metric is crime. This is a crime fighting strategy, but we also have to look at 911 calls, 311 calls, backlogs, civilian complaints. There's a host of issues that we have to look at, and RAND is doing that for us. And at some point in the future, we'll be releasing a report publicly. Yep. Billy?
Commissioner, first of all, thank you, and the incredible job you and your team do day in, day out. In the 70s, my dad and uncle and several people involved with the Police Foundation back then, which was just getting going, funded the Police Fest. There was an officer shot, I think, in the Diamond District. And so that was an incredible moment. I'm being told now that there's new technology. There was a detective who was shot in friendly fire a few months ago, and that there's new technology that's possibly be deployed that will allow them to also have police, bulletproof vests. Can you talk about that, or is that top secret?
So every police officer is issued a bullet-resistant vest when they come out of the academy. And Billy's talking about Detective Brian Simonson that was killed out in the 102 back in February 12th. He was killed. There was a Sprint store. Somebody came in there with a gun. was in the process of committing a commercial robbery. The police responded, uniformed police from the 102. Brian and his partner, Sergeant Gore, responded also. And as the perp came out, he had the gun pointed towards the police, and they exchanged, well, they didn't exchange rounds, they fired at him thinking that their lives were in jeopardy. Turned out it was not a real gun, and Brian was killed by friendly fire. We, with the Police Foundation and the DEA, are in the process of purchasing vests that are slightly different for the detectives. If you look at it, it kind of looks like the windbreakers that we wear. It's tough for detectives to wear their vest the whole time they're at work, because a lot of times they're within the precinct and they run out immediately to respond to some jobs. So we have to make sure that we give them equipment that they're going to actually use. And this is a vest that you can slip on in a matter of seconds, and it's an important part of us keeping the members of this police department safe. So thanks, Billy, and thanks to the Police Foundation also.
Commissioner, thank you very much. We're grateful for your time.